In this video, we'll look at how food is presented in different ways for different cultures. Specifically, we will use Chinese culture and Western culture. Of course, food is not the only way to define a culture, but it is a very effective way. First of all, let's look at the dining environment of the two cultures. In Western restaurants, people like to dine in a dim lighted environment, and usually there are music played, giving a somewhat romantic atmosphere. In Chinese restaurants, people like to dine in a very bright environment, and generally there are no music being played, it is just people talking loudly. Next, let's look at the dining practices. In Western cultures, each person gets their individual meals with specific servings. The meal requires eating with forks, spoons, and knives. In Chinese culture, dishes are all placed on one table. Everyone sits around the table and everyone has their own bowl, chopsticks, and spoon. Everyone constantly gets the food they want from the dishes on the table and put it in the bowl to eat. It is like a mini buffet. Basically, everyone shares the dishes, whereas in Western culture, each person orders their own food.
I would think food defines a culture in the way that cultures are so unique. It's very similar to how food is so unique. So in one menu, for example, you can have 5 or 7 cultures combined. It's the same way in one neighborhood, you can have 5 or 7 cultures combined. So that is how I believe culture is defined. Alright, so for example, in Western cultures, you associate Western culture with hamburgers and French fries. But even in Western culture, there's a big presence of Asian background. So it's very cool for people to go out and have sushi with their friends. So that's also a Western ideal, but with an Asian influence. For example, in Western culture, when you go out for dinner, it's a 3-course meal. And it's similar to that when you're at home too as well. But in the Asian culture, it's more family-oriented. You spread out the food and each person takes what they desire, as opposed to like individual courses.
Now, we'll look at the types of dishes from the two cultures. For Western style, appetizers are usually served, such as salad, bread, etc. For the soups, I found Western soups are mostly creamy and thicker than Chinese soups. Some popular ones are clam chowder, creamy mushroom soups, etc. The popular main courses are, for example, steak, sandwiches or burgers, pastas, etc. Dessert options are mostly cakes, brownies, ice creams, cookies, etc. For Chinese style, there are usually no appetizers, but sometimes they do. For Chinese soups, the texture of the soup are mostly very liquid, not thick, and are cooked with varieties of ingredients. The popular ones are ginseng chicken soup, tom yum soup, lamb soup, etc. For the main courses, Chinese eat rice and is served with different kinds of dishes such as ribs, sweet and sour pork, barbecue pork, etc. Desserts for Chinese culture are a bit different than Western culture. Chinese have sweet soup as dessert. For example, sweet potatoes in syrup, coconut tapioca soup with taro, 3 beans sweet soup, etc. And also steamed sweet buns such as red bean paste bun, etc. Different cultures also have different ways of preparing the same food. Take lobsters for example. Chinese people may cook it with pepper and salt and giving it a stronger taste, whereas Western people will just boil the whole lobster. A culture or a country can be recognized by the foods that are very popular in that culture, because when people see the food, they will think of the culture that the food is associated with. For example, when you eat pizza or pasta, you would know they come from Italy. When you eat sushi, you know they are from Japan. When you eat kimchi, you know they are from Korea. And when you eat curry, you know it is an Indian food, etc. Food is a very effective way to identify a culture because people eat every day, we encounter food every day. We all share the same sources of food, but through various cultures, the same food can be presented in a different way using different techniques of preparation. In the end, let's hear an example other than the Western and Chinese culture.
Well, in my culture, I'm Muslim, so you have the meat has to be halal, so therefore it has to be prepared in a certain way. So we don't eat pork. So like bacon and like breakfast stuff like bacon or like pork tenderloin, that's not an item in our household. Like I've never had that, but it's made up like, for example, like in Guyanese culture, we have a lot of like fried rice or chow mein noodles is like a big thing. We also have a lot of Indian influences in our cooking because before Guyana, we were all like the culture came from India. So you have like curry and rice and stuff like that. So it's very different, but it's generally the same. You sit down, you have dinner with your family. It's more like they spread out the food and you just take what you want and then sit down. And so you can like discuss the food or discuss whatever. And so, yeah.
So do you think being halal defines that you're a Muslim?
It doesn't define that yes, that's like a part of being Muslim, but it's a culture, like Muslim, like you have like, but it's different, like you can have different subsets of what people like of Guyanese Muslim or Pakistani Muslim is different, but that's like a sort of like religion-based culture, but you can have like, in my household, there's a lot of Canadian influences in, like, so pancakes for breakfast and like different culture foods as well, because we live in such a diverse society, especially in Toronto. We have the different groups of people, and plus my friend group is so diverse as well. So we'll have like different desserts and stuff like that from different cultures.